From the Channel Seed Studios, Nick Osen and Jake Brend talk all things Big 12. This is Firmly Entrenched, powered by Heartland Flags and Gifts. Every team, every sport, every flag, almost. Here's Nick and Jake on Iowa Everywhere.
Hello and welcome to the Channel Seed Studios. This is Firmly Entrenched. I'm Jake Brend from Local 5 Sports. Joining me now is Nick Osen of 247 Sports, CycloneAlert.com. Nick, you pumped? How's it going?
I'm doing great, Jake. You know, we've been working towards this for a while. Obviously, shared our announcements recently. The excitement's been out there, doing a little planning, and it's great to be here in the Channel Seed Studios, getting this show rolling with you. We're just a couple weeks away from some Big 12 football, Jake.
Yeah, how many days? Gosh, my math should be better. 16, 17, something like that until Iowa State welcomes
16.
You and I into Jack Trice Stadium. Week 0 is next week. Is that right, Aiden? Is that when you're going to Vegas?
That would be correct. Yeah.
Yeah, so our producer, Aiden Wyatt, is the man. Aiden and I go way back to our Wide Right Natty Light days, probably going on like 4 years now. So Aiden will be behind the scenes producing everything, making Nick look pretty, making me sound good. But this show, it's going to be definitely Iowa State centered. Nick is a beat writer covering Iowa State. I'm a lifelong Cyclone fan, but this is also going to be more of an emphasis on the Big 12, just because we've got so much Cyclone content coming from everywhere else at Iowa Everywhere. We're really going to channel in on that Big 12. And we're going to normally schedule on Wednesdays. I know today's a Thursday, but once the season starts, we should be live every Wednesday at 11. Is that right? 11? Probably something like that. Wednesdays.
Yeah, that sounds about right, Jake. No, so we'll be going live. I think we're going to start the kind of live aspect on Wednesdays in a couple weeks, you know, leading up to football season really officially starting for college football. You know, Iowa State, like you mentioned, has a major focus around here. There are a couple other shows that are a little more ISU centric, but because of, you know, your long-term kind of fandom, obviously who I cover, who I love covering with the Cyclones, they're still going to be at least somewhat heavily focused in some of our shows.
Absolutely.
Certainly the Big 12 aspect. And today, just because we don't have a ton of Big 12 football quite yet this week, we're going to get a little extra, you know, personal kind of flavor and touches from us, and Cyclones focus, some kind of previews, talking about fall camp a little bit. It's going to be awesome. And, you know, we're really grateful, obviously, Aiden and, you know, everybody that's tuning in this week and hopefully in the future.
Yeah. So let's dive into what this show is going to look like on a week-to-week basis, at least during football. So because we're recording on Wednesdays, that's going to be 4 days after games. So it's going to be more limited on game reaction. We'll certainly still have some of that, but it's mainly going to be focused around reactions to the Tuesday press conferences, not only from Matt Campbell, but around the Big 12. And there's some big personalities in the Big 12. We've got Mike Gundy. We've got Dana Holgerson coming back to the conference at Houston. So those guys are usually soundbite machines. So we'll be reacting to that the next day. And then along with that, we're going to be looking ahead more to the upcoming Saturday, giving our predictions, picks, and just previewing games from every team across the Big 12.
But yeah, you know, I think it's funny you first mentioned Gundy, as that's kind of where my head went. You know, I'm much less of a fan of his than I was when I was a kid. But, you know, when I went to Big 12 media days, I remember I was like filling up my water, you know, trying to stay hydrated as we're working, and just several things coming up kind of like from his mouth from the big stage, essentially the focus of like Bedlam rivalry and, you know, some of his issues with that, or like the transfer portal. He's a good soundbite to generally be able to build some content off of. You know, I think Chris Kleiman, an Iowa guy, not necessarily maybe that eccentric or things of that nature, but I do think, you know, he's somebody that people generally follow a little bit.
Right.
I think Kleiman, I think Leipold, just in terms of the focus and kind of real connecting ability that he has. You mentioned Holgerson. I think some of these new programs, like maybe a Central Florida, will be fun to tune in on. And yeah, I think it's going to be definitely intriguing. Wouldn't you say, Aiden?
Yeah, the Big 12 is a fun conference for personalities for sure. I'm a big fan
You
of
mentioned Dana Holgerson. I don't anticipate Houston ever being good enough coming to Jack Trey Stadium where an Iowa State win would mean a field storming, but that would be such full circle if it was. So Holgerson could come back wearing different colors at a different school and call Iowa State fans unprofessional. So coaches, Iowa State fans, makes me think we should probably explain the name a little bit. So for those who don't know, Firmly Entrenched is what Gene Chizik said in his second year at Iowa State when asked if he was going to leave. And he said, no, I'm firmly entrenched. Not too long after, he took the Auburn job and cheated his way to a national championship. And he left Iowa State after winning, it was either 2 or 3 games in 2 seasons. And then, of course, the rest is history. But I was thinking about this today, just with the name. As infamous as it was, I don't think Iowa State football is where they are today without Gene Chizik. Not because of anything that he did coaching wise or building relationships with the fans, because he clearly didn't do either of that. But Paul Rhodes was really able to start kind of the momentum as far as fan support, facility support to where they are now, along with the help of Jamie Pollard. And he was able to do that because he definitely capitalized on some of the guys Chizik recruited. But we don't need to talk about, we'll talk about Gene Chizik more in a bit, but I want to hear about Nick, whether maybe you're a fan of Local 5 Sports, if you're from my hometown, Indianola, tuning in and you don't know who Nick is. Nick, you want to explain your journey to Des Moines a little bit?
Absolutely, Jake. Yeah, so I'm, I guess, originally from Rockford, Illinois. That's where I was born. Spent the first couple few years of my life, but grew up near Madison, Wisconsin. Decently small town of Waunakee. Actually, the same high school that current Cyclone tight end Andrew Keller went to. Was a major star there. So that's kind of a cool connection we've got here. Went to the University of Wisconsin, in Madison, so with the Badgers. And I've really known, I wanted to do something with sports, right? Sports media for a long time. And obviously not going to kind of go into everything here, though I know a lot of my readers have enjoyed hearing about some of that stuff. But, I covered the Badgers a little bit in college, the Milwaukee Bucks. That was a real major highlight. But I'd say my first kind of big opportunity, Jake, came right after college. I went out to Washington, D.C. Hadn't spent much time out there before, but actually got a full-time internship while I was there. It was full-time, so a couple months, with PTI. Pardon the interruption.
Oh, yeah.
Mike Wilbon, Tony Kornheiser, kind of some of
That's awesome.
Appreciate you, man. Some of the modern-day legends that, quite honestly, have started a lot of this kind of like back and forth. They really helped with things like First Take and just kind of spots where you can really communicate more and focus maybe more on personality and debate, still while kind of talking about the content, of course. I spent 2 years right after that, just about, with ESPN, working on Sports Center out in Bristol, Connecticut. Again, not like a huge place, especially for having that type of company out there. And then coming up on 2 years here, I'd say about 20, 21 months or so right now here in Iowa with 247 Sports, Cyclone Alert. I've loved it, man. I mean, I've said it since early on. I will say it all the time. This fan base, like you alluded to, with kind of some of the fan support from like Rhodes into, of course, Matt Campbell. I think that aspect of things here is incredible. I really like Des Moines. I like Ames. I like people like you guys. And, just some of these opportunities, obviously being able to hop on a show now with, we're kind of 3 people here working on this from really all different companies. We all do a little bit of different things. So it's been really cool, Jake. That's a little bit of, how I've gotten here. And I'm just excited to officially, we've been talking about this for a while. So to kind of get it, running off the ground, and obviously with the help of, our producer and just this great content planning, I think it's going to be a lot of fun here. I really do.
Yeah, it's awesome. And I'm a bit of the opposite of Nick. I born and raised in Iowa. I was born in Des Moines, but lived in Indianola, Iowa my entire life.
Is that where you went to high school? I don't remember.
So yeah, I went to Indianola, and then I pulled an upset and against all odds. I didn't go to Iowa State. I stayed in town and went to Simpson. So literally 3 months ago was the first time I ever moved away from Indianola. As crazy as that is. So
tennis played a role in you going to?
Not at all.
No. Okay.
No.
That just ended up happening and kind of being a focus. I know that much.
Yeah. So long story short, I went to Simpson because it felt like I got recruited to be there for journalism and broadcasting and all that stuff. And that was different than any other visit I went on. So
we got a recruit over here, Aiden, or what?
The tennis played no part. I actually had to be convinced to play tennis by someone on the women's team. And for some reason I did it. And then I became the first ever D3 NIL athlete. So I guess it paid off. Not anything that I did on the court. So I went to Simpson. I was at Wide Right Natty Light for 5 years. And then I interned at WHO, 13 Sports, Sound Off with Keith Murphy, John Sears, Mark Freund. And then I was able to land a job at Local 5 Sports during my senior year of college as a full-time employee. And now I'm still there, and I'm excited to start this off. And it's a cool opportunity because when you're on TV, it's a lot of reporting. You do get to show off personality in a different way. There's just not a bunch of opinion or commentary like on a podcast. So I'm excited to do that part.
I just got a quick question because I know truly I've really learned recently, as I alluded to with Aiden before, how big of an Iowa State fan you are, Jake. Did you ever kind of heavily consider going to school in Ames, like with the Cyclones and kind of studying that type of thing there? Or was it really, okay, Simpson's kind of really wanting me, they're showing some love, this was an easy decision?
So I went Simpson was my first visit, and I'm like, yeah, I like it, but I don't want to stay in my hometown. So I actually had signed paperwork to go to Iowa State, where I was going to live, who I was going to live with, and all that stuff. And last minute, before really you could make an official decision, someone else from Simpson called me back in and convinced me. So yeah, I was on a plane like Stephen Leith on my way to Iowa State, and that one didn't end up happening. But
the Travis Hunter late day flip, man, I respect it. That's awesome.
It was last minute. And Aiden, he's a part of Iowa Everywhere, so a lot of people listening, I'm sure, know about him. But you want to tell us about yourself at all? You can say no.
No.
Okay.
I'd like to keep actually.
Good to see Aiden.
Yeah. I actually like it when people know very little about me.
He's a man of many mysteries.
One of my favorite things, if I'm at a bar or a party or whatever,
big party guy,
I'll talk to someone for like an hour and never introduce myself. And then they just have no idea who I am.
And then
I like that.
And then one of their friends will tell them after, like, do you realize you were just talking
who that
to?
Was.
You were just talking to Aiden Wyatt of Iowa Everywhere and Cyclone Fanatic.
Aiden Wyatt, party guy.
But yeah,
tell him I know Nick Osen a little bit. Oh yeah, okay.
You know Nikki Clicks?
Nikki Clicks gets the clicks. Nikki Clicky.
So one thing that Nick is really good at, maybe it's his best part, is he's super connected to the Iowa State program, whether football, basketball, women's basketball. And his boards are awesome. His premium boards. I read them all the time. I get updates on guys who are going to be impact players that I'd never even heard of. So we're going to introduce this thing called the 2-minute drill with Nick. He's going to give a few, I guess, nuggets. Would that be the right? Just
notes.
A few nuggets from his boards, just about Iowa State fall camp. But before that, I think you want to talk about some flags. Is that right?
Definitely. Yeah, I absolutely do. I want to just say a quick thanks and a mention to Heartland Flags and Gifts for the title sponsorship. You can find these flags online at heartlandflags.com or in store, 3719 Southwest 9th, Des Moines, just right down the road, about 10, 15 minutes from us. Free shipping anywhere in the U.S. New products constantly. You can find just about any flag you might really want, whether that's Iowa State, whether you're maybe a fan of another team here in this state, whether that's Northern Iowa, Western Kentucky, thinking of some of the transfers that Iowa State has. Trey King, absolutely primed for a big year in basketball. Going to have a little bit of a focus, but I mean, with the depth and kind of amount of content and flags that they have at Heartland Flags and Gifts, I could even maybe see something like, I don't know, a high school or like Simpson, maybe?
Like Simpson College.
Do you think they would have that?
So I'm on heartlandflags.com right now, and I see Simpson College.
That's
So Heartland Flag, they know ball. And I'm clicking on this flag right here, and I'm going to need to call up our friends there. They do have the Simpson logo, but I don't know if you're familiar with this, but my alma mater has the greatest mascot in the history of sports.
What's that?
It's Thunder the Elephant. Aiden, can you pull this up? I don't know how easy it would be to find, but
regardless, it's an incredible, spot. Sincerely, Heartland Flags and Gifts. That type of depth, we're going to see if Aiden can find the mascot Jake's alluding to. But right now is simply, we're a couple weeks away from football, the perfect time to get your tailgating flags, here for game days, etc. Because remember, as of right now, everybody is still undefeated heading into the season, guys. So
Truman State, man, they've got some great flags.
Yeah, I know some people actually from Wanakee that went there. So, that just kind of speaks to the depth that they have, and we're very grateful for what they provide here, Jake. In terms of the 2-minute drill, whether it's, fall camp like you alluded to right now, and we're hoping Aiden can find this for our viewers here, or even throughout the season, this is going to be kind of a feature segment, obviously going to leave, some things to my dedicated readers, subscribers, fans on the site, but just some little notes that I've kind of learned or heard and garnered throughout, this fall camp that I'm comfortable kind of bringing on and sharing with people. So I think every time, whether I've been asked this today, Jake, by you, or sometimes, on the radio recently, my mind just continues to go, and it has really for the last month or so, to these young running backs, guys. Obviously, that was a room that dealt with a lot of injury for Iowa State last season. Jirel Brock, part of kind of the gambling investigation right now. So that is still kind of being figured out, with respect to that situation. Cartavius Norton, Eli Sanders, they're still on the younger side, certainly Norton, but I just continue to hear great things. Two true freshman tailbacks, Abu Sama.
Oh, yeah.
If you're listening to this, Jake and Aiden, you probably have heard that name. I mean, you can't even really argue it sincerely. I really enjoyed getting to know him throughout the recruiting process. Simply one of the most decorated athletes, certainly in recent Iowa high school, sports history, if not ever. I believe we were both, I know a lot of us media were at his record-breaking performance in the state title game. You were there too,
yeah,
right?
I was there for Local 5 and Friday Night Blitz covering the state championship. I have never, ever seen a high school athlete do what he did on that field.
Truly. And Jake, my partner here is not exaggerating things at all. I remember there were just kind of random media people, right, that I didn't really know like that quite yet. And we were almost just laughing as the game progressed because it truly was a video game performance. I mean, whether you're playing with like prime LT and Madden years ago, it's not likely you're getting nearly 400 rushing yards and 6 rushing touchdowns.
Right.
So all that to say, he has been a real bright spot. I think that the weight that he's put on since being in the program, as well as just during track season, he's come in physically ready, Jake. The talent has been there. The speed has been there. Coach Nate Shieldhouse even spoke at the press conference this week about how incredible he has been, as well as Carson Hansen. Now, that's a player that, it came down to Iowa State and K-State. I got to know him really well throughout the process. And I think that people didn't necessarily maybe get as excited as they should have. I don't think a lot of people watch the film, totally understand that. Not everybody does, but he played in like a wing power T type offense up in Minnesota. I believe it was with Lakeville South. And it was just a little bit under the radar. But both these guys, they won Gatorade Players of the Year in their respective states. And they've come in, Jake, and I'm getting this sense from a lot of the freshman class, but specifically these two, mentally ready, physically ready. Even Cartavius Norton was telling me yesterday, these guys aren't shying away from the competition. They're battling. They're all learning from each other. And what, finally, we've kind of seen some of these highlights from like Cyclone Football account. Some of these runs, Jake and Aiden, these guys do not look and perform like freshmen right now. They really don't.
Yeah, I've obviously watched a ton of Abu Sama just over the years, being a Central Iowa kid, and I've watched some of Hanson's film. And it's funny. So I was golfing with Jeff Woody yesterday in a golf tournament up in Storm Lake. Aiden was our cameraman. It felt like I was on the Live Golf Tour. It was kind of freaky having a camera on me the whole time. But Jeff Woody, Iowa State running back under Paul Rhodes, was just kind of going on a rant about why would Carson Hansen be compared to Christian McCaffrey? And he's just like, it's only because he's white. Like, he's a great running back. And then
really good.
Brent Bloom came in and he had a great one-liner and said, he's not Christian McCaffrey. He's between Christian McCaffrey and Jeff Woody. And I thought that was perfect. But it's just kind of crazy, the stereotypes that we as the media, the people will put on players. So I think that can probably lead us into just our general football discussion. That
I had one more note.
You've got one more. Okay, go ahead.
I also want to say, so I'm very high on those young running backs as well as young tight ends, Jake. I think that, I mentioned Andrew Keller. He's in the second year with the program. He'll be a guy, you see, especially in the passing game, but he's put on a lot of weight to kind of improve blocking as well. Gabe Burkle entering his second season in the program. I think he's somebody that you're really going to see in games come this fall. And then Ben Bramer. That was a late addition to the 23 class. Huge pickup from tight ends coach Taylor Mauser, Matt Campbell in this program. They flipped him from Nebraska. And when you put those guys in with, T. Moore, Tyler Moore, who's been around for a few years, Easton Dean's going to be the leader. I mean, I'm sure you can see me smiling a little bit. I'm excited for this team and this fan base because I think that they were maybe a little spoiled by the success of Sainer, of course, Charlie Kohler, and then Chase Allen. And then it was a little tough for last season, but I just expect, and I can say this quite confidently, the next 1 to 3 years at least are going to be really impressive with that unit, Jake, that when Iowa State has found so much success offensively, the tight ends have been a staple. And I foresee that happening again, just with the sheer talent, depth, and coaching that the team has there in that spot.
So the running backs and the tight ends, of course, will, if Iowa State gets to a bowl game, it will be because of their success, which will be indirectly because of the offensive line. And yesterday at the Cyclopenic Road Show, someone asked a question to, I believe it was Jeff Woody, about how Iowa State's going to handle the loss of Hunter Deckers and I guess maybe what went wrong for Deckers last year. And what he said pretty much was that quarterbacks typically are not supposed to be playmakers unless you're talking about the most elite in the world, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson. Quarterbacks are supposed to be distributors. And it's no secret that Deckers had immense arm talent, but there was a lot of times last year where he get in pressured situations, makes the wrong read, forces it into Xavier Hutchinson, throws an interception. And what he's saying is, whether it's Rocco Beck or JJ Cole, that these guys may not match the talent of Deckers immediately, but they might play better within the system. But none of that's going to matter unless you have an offensive line to step up and be the catalyst for that run game, no matter which of the four running backs are behind the line. But I've got a question on, if not losing just specifically Deckers, you don't want to pile on the guy, but from a culture standpoint, losing the 4 or 5 players that they've already lost or will lose from this gambling investigation, if it's going to be addition by subtraction, because I think it will be. I think back to 2017, Matt Campbell's second year. I was front row at that Texas game when Jacob Park played terrible. And Park, I'll stand by this, is the most talented quarterback that I've ever seen come through Iowa State. I was too young for Seneca Wallace, but Park could make any throw you wanted. He could read a defense, but there was just something not right with him as the leader of the team. And when he got kicked off the team and Kyle Kemp comes in, a guy who couldn't make the throws that Park could, a guy who couldn't throw 50 yards down the field, a guy who wasn't going to be getting looked at by any NFL team. He comes in, changes the season around completely, almost rallied around Kempt. I think something similar can happen this year. I don't know if it will, but I think it can. Do you agree with that?
I certainly agree with the last part, Jake, that something like that can happen. In terms of your, exact question, like addition by subtraction, here is how I would kind of answer that. And I think it will answer that just a little bit indirectly. I get the sense, being at these pressers and just kind of getting a feel, for the program a little bit, obviously on the beat. I get the sense that these guys, they haven't necessarily expected. When I say these guys, I mean the team that is at camp, that's practicing. You're seeing the highlights right now. They haven't expected to have a lot, if any, of the players that were involved in the investigation really with them. So, like, because of that, I think that these guys have just been so laser focused on getting better every day, because people, they're going to talk about, the gambling. Obviously, some of the media outside of this area has been, but to me, kind of with my job, I like to really get into the football side of things. I think that there was already, Jake, a pretty heavy focus on, improving offensive line play, or getting bigger and like more comfortable and physical in the trenches, O-line, D-line, or just kind of staying healthy. I think there were so many other focuses that I can say pretty comfortably whether the team starts 4-0, 3-1, 2-2, whatever that looks like, I think this gambling talk is going to be a thing of the past. So I think that's my best way to say, I think it's going to be a subtraction of just kind of that conversation topic.
The distraction.
Yeah, exactly. But in terms of an addition by subtraction, I just think that the talent and the depth, I mean, I cover recruiting almost full time within what I do. I know that these last couple classes have been really, really, really good, Jake. You hear a lot of these names, whether it's, from me, from other reporters, or simply from the coaches themselves at these pressers. There is a clear level of excitement about some of these young guys. So I think that because that topic won't have to be talked about as much, there's going to be an addition just focusing on these young players. And do I think that true freshman J.J. Cole is as talented as, some of what Deckers showed last year, like you alluded to with Woody? I guess we'll see. But I think either way, a guy like J.J. Cole has a higher ceiling than Hunter Deckers could have, just because of how he approaches everything, how he approaches the game, the amount of time he puts into his work, his craft. And, oh, yeah, he's 6'6", 6'7", can deliver the ball probably as far, if not further, than Deckers could. And, I mean, he was a 4-star guy for a reason.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've got a fun proposition, but before we get to that, I'd like to thank Circa Sports Iowa, the exclusive sports betting app of Iowa Everywhere. This is an app I've had on my phone since I turned of age to gamble, and it is betting the way it should be. Highest limits, the lowest odds, the lowest holds, the best odds. You can download that app in the App Store, wherever you get apps, Google Play. And Circus, like, it's the golf odds, it's talked about all the time. It is insane how much better their odds are, whether you're betting a major. But with that season wrapping down, we do have the Ryder Cup in a month. But I have the idea, what if we got 2 Farmageddons this year in back-to-back weeks? I'm not saying it's going to happen. I actually don't even know if Iowa State's going to make a bowl, but I was floating around on the Circa Sports app.
By the way. I'll say
I was floating around on the Circa Sports app this morning, and I was looking at the exacta odds. So you could, for example, you could do Texas over OU. One that I saw was K-State over Iowa State in Dallas at 300-1. That's some pretty crazy odds. I don't think that's going to happen, but a Farmageddon in back-to-back weeks would be crazy.
So that's essentially saying they match up last week of the regular season,
and then they play again.
And that's the matchup for the conference championship.
Yeah. And I'm not a financial advisor. I would not advise anyone to take that bet. But one bet that I would say is not a bad idea. Next week, week 0, Aiden, 2 guys named Chris, Matty Van Wink. They're going to be in Vegas for week 0. And the biggest game of week 0 is Florida at Utah. I love the Utes by 7. I don't know about you, but That's what I think. And if you want to bet, please be sure to bet responsibly on
I'm
Circa
curious,
Sports Iowa.
what makes you so high on the Utes in that one? Because I think they're really pretty good. I will say that. But I also think Napier and Florida need to make some noise this year.
I think they need to, and I don't know if they will. And Utah, we've seen since they've joined the Big 12 or even a year before that, their fan base is rampant. I think they're going to be pretty good again. It's a home game, which you usually don't get in week 0. A
Like
lot
a
of the
matchup
time,
like that for sure.
a lot of the time, those are neutral site games. You go play in Vegas and Dallas at the Sugar Bowl. But I just think from the sheer fact that it's week 0 and Utah is typically pretty good at the beginning of the season. And Utah is actually ranked 14th in the AP poll that was released earlier this week. And if we're looking ahead a year to the 2024 Big 12, Utah is actually the highest ranked future Big 12, or they're the highest ranked Big 12 member. So Texas is the highest Big 12 member currently. They're ranked 11th. But when I was typing out this AP poll, it was kind of crazy to look. The entire top 12 is SEC, Big 10, if we're talking 2024, or pretty much in bed with the SEC. You've got so the only two teams that won't be in the Big 10 or SEC as of now in 2024 are Florida State and Clemson. Two schools that have been open about wanting to get as far away from the ACC as possible. And that
Florida State's been incredibly open about that, by the way.
It's just crazy to look just at that. It's the parity in college football spread across the conferences isn't going to be there anymore. But if we focus on present tense, we've got Texas, K-State, TCU, and OU all ranked of the current Big 12 teams. What's your immediate thoughts on that?
So I'll be honest, and I learned pretty quickly, Jake and Aiden, that Texas does not have many fans where we are here. And it seems like they're one of the kind of most probably hated teams around here, obviously, along with Iowa and a couple other teams. I personally think they have so much talent this year. Like they almost have to do something. Or even though Coach Sark has made so much noise on the recruiting trail, you got to start questioning things. Really, if they don't, I mean, their roster is, they obviously lost some top flight players, including at the running back position. But I think that there's a reason that a lot of people are picking them. I'm not sure I would have had them 11. I'd maybe have them a couple slots down, but I do think that they're, really in a talented spot this season. A couple other things that stood out to me. I think TCU, I'm not quite as high on them. I need to take another look at their schedule, Jake, but just with the amount of players they lost, specifically offensively, some of the big names, but, defensively, including a couple stud corners, I think they're a little high. People really buying into Will Howard and K-State. I do think Oklahoma will bounce back. And I think Iowa, I could have seen them in kind of that 22 to 25 range. I also could have seen them out of the rankings because I think that they're putting a lot of stock into, that new offense with Cade McNamara, but I do think that defense will be pretty solid as well, Jake.
So I want to go back to Texas. I am going to be the one that questions Texas. I get why they're the favorites. That there's no doubt they have the most talent, but they've had the most talent every single year since Colt McCoy was there, other than OU. But it's not like when OU was winning all of those Big 12 championships and going to the playoff. It's not like their talent was substantially that much more than Texas. And right now, if you go to Circa Sports, you could do something that I would not advise, and you could bet Texas straight up to win the Big 12 at plus 105. That's the same odds as playing blackjack. So if you're even considering betting on Texas to win the Big 12, just go play some blackjack. Or you could bet the Cubs at minus 150 to make the playoffs, because I just don't buy.
Are we that high for the Cubs?
Oh yeah, they're making the playoffs.
Yeah, Cubs are back. I don't
Yeah,
even know.
Cubs are
Back.
so back.
All
They're
the way back.
they're
I
so
didn't realize
back.
the odds were at that spot, but all right,
Yeah,
I love
they're
it.
so back. But Texas, I'm not going to believe it until I see it. Should they be the favorites? Yes. Would I pick them to win? Maybe. I have no reason to believe when they haven't done anything since Colt McCoy was there. And I was in 3rd grade when that happened. It's just, they've always had the money. I don't think they have the culture. And I know Quinn Ewers is good. Do I think that he should be the 4th longest odds for Heisman? I don't.
Probably not. No. I mean, I think the potential's there, but I saw him, I was live for the Iowa State Texas game. He needs to be a lot more consistent. He does. And I think that some of the accuracy has to come along a little bit. His leadership, I think he's done some things this offseason to really try to take that next step. Texas, a program like that gets a lot of kind of buzz and eyes on it, Jake. But I do think the talent is there. And quite frankly, I think the Big 12 is pretty wide open. That was kind of a sentiment that we talked about at Media Days. And I really believe it. I don't think it'd be shocking if like 6 or 7 teams won this thing. Like if you chose one of those 5, 6, 7 teams, I really don't. I think similar to basketball, and a beautiful thing about this conference is just the every day, every night, every week levels of competition.
Yeah, so I'm pulling up their schedule right now. They go to Alabama. Actually, I'm not sure if they go to them or if it's a neutral site game. It is on the road at Alabama. So that's a really, really long shot. But I have no doubt in my mind that Texas is going to show up for that game and be wildly competitive. I don't know if they'll win it, but I think it says a lot about Texas that I'm more confident about them going to Alabama week 2 than I am them going to Houston on October 21st, or them going to Iowa State on November 18th. And that's where I think it falls in line with Texas just not living up to their standard ever. But we can move on from the AP poll to some more important news. I don't know if you saw this, but Brent Yormark announced yesterday that Nelly is going to be at the 2023 Big 12 championship game as the halftime show. I think it's awesome. I think Nelly, he's not on any Mount Rushmore of artists or anything like that, but he just feels kind of Big 12. He feel I don't know how to explain it. I know he's old school and
St. Louis,
and
Yormark, that's certainly in at least kind of Big 12.
Yeah, it's Big 12 country. It's Big 12 flyover country. No teams in Missouri currently. But I had the idea of who would you rather have other than Nelly? We all brought 3. And then I think we actually got 3 from CW on the golf course yesterday. But Nick, let's start with you. Who would your 3 be?
Yeah, so I'm a big fan of the Nelly choice. He certainly was the artist for a couple of my first, CDs growing up. Hope that doesn't age me too much here, Jake. But a couple names. So I thought of Chance the Rapper pretty quickly. I was actually supposed to see him in concert pretty soon. So that was an easy one for me. Hopefully friend of the show, Vivi, my girlfriend, hopefully she takes a look at this. Another pick would be Cardi B. We have seen her together. I think she would be up there for me. And then
wait. There's something that I forgot to mention in the intros of the show. What's up with CW and Cardi B? So we were
in the WAP.
we were on. I don't even remember what T-Box it was yesterday, but Williams is playing music all day. The first song I remember him playing was the Atlanta Braves Tomahawk Chant, and then it went to Brooks and Dunn, and then we're on hold probably 15, and he's like, Jake, you better tweet this. You've never golfed until you've played golf with Chris Williams, and he plays WAP on the tee box. And I'm so glad I stopped filming, because after his tee shot, he started doing the WAP. It was horrifying.
It would have been an all-time clip.
Yeah, but it might have put us in a bad spot with our sponsors.
I think probably would have, Jake.
But he actually didn't do it. At least I hope. Not while we were on the course. But Cardi B, that's an interesting pick, but I like it. What's your final one?
Pretty loyal to that, yeah, from kind of when she really got famous. And then I was struggling to think of a third, that I really kind of felt good and comfortable sharing on the show. Driving over here and Piano Man by Billy Joel came on. And obviously, he's got many great hits. I've heard he's a terrific live performer. So those would be three of the first few names really that came to mind there, guys.
So
let's go to Aiden.
Yeah, we'll go to Aiden. And then how about I read CWs and lead into mine?
Yeah,
that sound good?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So my first pick, talking about someone who can really put on a show. You might have to extend the halftime show. I don't know. Probably. The halftime show might be the main event of the Big 12 championship game.
Do you hate the 8x8?
Taylor Swift might be a bigger deal than the Big 12.
You're kidding.
Just saying. I think realistically, if Taylor Swift was a halftime show, Swifties would buy out.
Why would we want Swifties at the Big 12 championship?
Man, she puts on a show. That's what I base.
Speaking from experience, yes. Correct?
Yeah. Yep.
He is.
Do you know who else can put on a show? Mike Gundy.
Yeah.
Neil Brown.
Actually, Mike Gundy is a good segue into my next pick because he was on stage with this guy like 2 weeks ago, I think. Zach Bryan.
That's a great pick, Aiden. You redeemed yourself completely.
Yeah. Another guy who just puts on a friggin' show.
Man, I love you guys. I'm not big into the country. I got to say, I'm sorry.
I think Zach Bryan is amazing.
Yeah, he's
got a lot of fans around here, though, for sure.
Yeah. Then I can't believe it wasn't this for my third pick. I thought it was going to be this, honestly. Garth Brooks.
Oh,
Big 12 ambassador, Garth Brooks.
He is.
I thought it was a layup that he was going to be the halftime show, but
I just don't put him in like him and Brent Yormark in the same room. But maybe that's just me.
Well, Garth Brooks has a role with the Big 12, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does. But I guess I just think Yormark, Jay-Z,
and Garth Brooks.
And Garth Brooks.
The big three.
So for CWs, of course, Mark Chestnut, which I couldn't tell you a Mark Chestnut song, but I know that he's
you definitely know one Mark Chestnut song.
Which one is it? Can you sing it for us?
No. Do you know I Don't Want to Miss a Thing by Aerosmith?
Oh, yeah.
That's Mark Chestnut.
What?
That's his song. The more you know.
Okay.
I'm a Mark Chestnut.
Yeah.
He also said
C-Dub's favorite song is Going Through the Big D and Don't Mean Dallas.
Oh gosh. Okay. All right. Yeah, we'll move on to his next pick, which is very, very this if you go to Circus Sports Iowa and looked at futures for future Big 12 championship halftime shows, this would probably be the best odds. Hologram Tupac.
Maybe long odds.
I don't think we need to say anything more about that. And then, so CW and I had a crossover for our picks. George Strait, which I think that goes without saying. He's Texas. He is Texas. He's the most Texas guy maybe to ever live. And
I'm excited about Jake's other two picks, though, Aiden.
So, which one do you want first? Do you want one or two?
Two first, because
okay.
I think you got to end with a one.
So this is just playing completely into my music taste. So I have a playlist on Spotify that I started back when I was in high school. It's called I Have a Bad Taste in Music. And that is literally what the case is. So I'm going to go with Playboi Carti. I don't know if too many of our fans know much about Playboi Carti. I know for a fact that two guys named Chris don't know who Playboi Carti is.
I've got a little bit of Playboi Carti.
But I'm just going to take you through the first 4 songs that are on this playlist. It's Magnolia by Playboi Carti, Santeria by Sublime, What's My Age Again, and Swimming Pools. So that's like my music taste is all over the place. And I just kind of mentioned it I don't even know what genre you want to put these guys in, but they have the greatest halftime performance in the history of sports. It's Creed. And they did it in Dallas. I don't know, Aiden, do you have the video of them singing Can you take me higher? And they're floating around the stadium. It's gold. If that didn't come through Yormark's head, hopefully they just big timed him. And they're like,
Yeah.
we've performed for the Dallas Cowboys. You think we would come to the Big 12? But I'm not a Creed fan by any means, but I think they would be an incredible halftime show. And
that was actually a pretty good impression.
And if it was like, let's say do it in 2026, because I think they did that halftime show in 2001, 25-year anniversary. It's in the stars. It's got to happen. So I think we're going to put a bow on this, but we'll finish with just a quick little. Did you watch episode 2 of Hard Knocks?
So, not going to lie to you or our fans. It's been a busy week. I'm one episode behind, but I do know who a major focus of that show
Aiden,
was.
Did you watch?
I've not been able to watch it.
Okay, so I'm the only one that's watched.
And full. You're the only one.
So I will give a very good endorsement for it, and everyone that's listening. It was the Will McDonald episode. Of course, it still followed around Aaron Rodgers a lot, and Sauce. Actually, didn't really. Wait, Sauce. Where have I heard that name?
Sauce. That's
Sauce Williams.
Sauce Williams. He sent a text the other day. He says, "Hey, I want you guys to call me Sauce from now on."
But Will McDonald was a heavy focus. And, quite honestly, Jake, I've gotten this sense. I think a lot of people around here, excited about a first round pick, of course. And I think a lot of people knew what Will McDonald could do, but I think that it's getting new to people, some of his story. We had a funny moment with John Haycock at the presser this week. He had talked about how Will wasn't riding around on his skateboard too much here because it was obviously just, a worry. People wanted him to stay healthy, not get injured. There have been some clips of Will kind of riding in on his skateboard in New York with the Jets. And then if we're just talking sheer football, Jake, I think that he's shown some of his array of, sack and pass rushing moves pretty quickly. Obviously, one clip that was kind of getting around this week, I'm sure Cyclones fans loved, was his spin move that he did and that it worked, not just on anybody, but of course on former Iowa lineman Tristan Wirfs. So I'm getting the sense that while there's already been excitement about Will and the first round pick and the Jets, on the field, he may make some noise a little bit earlier than some may have expected as well.
Yeah, he looked good, and he also looked good in I don't know what you call it, a nail salon, tattoo parlor. He was just getting everything pierced. He was getting his eyebrow pierced. He was getting his nose pierced. I don't know if I can't watch that stuff.
So that's what I had not seen yet. And that's a little tough. I think the eyebrow, for me picturing that would hurt.
So I got it because I've interviewed Will, and he's such a unique guy. He's not the type that you just want to sit across from you and talk with. You got to get him out of, or maybe that was getting him in his comfort zone and just being Will McDonald, because he's a unique dude. But it was really cool to see that side of him. And I would guess with the whole Dalvin Cook signing and Breece Hall being activated, I'd guess we're going to have a lot to talk about next week after that third episode of Hard Knocks. But for now, I don't have anything else. We'll be here all football season talking Big 12. Anything big we missed?
Yeah, so we'll
Aiden?
be here. I was just going to add, live soonish. And those will, our shows will generally be when we do live at 2:30 Central, I believe, during
2:30.
football season.
Okay. Maybe I was thinking 11 because that's what time we did this today.
That would line up.
That would line up. But we want to thank you all for tuning in to this week's episode of Firmly Entrenched in the Channel Seeds studio. What a beautiful studio. I think I'm going to play some NBA Jam after this. But for Nick Osen, Aiden White, I'm Jake Brend. Thanks for tuning in, and be sure to listen to everything on Iowa Everywhere all season long.